After Justin Trudeau himself accepted that Canada's allegations against the Indian government had no hard evidence, the brinksmanship is continuing. Now, the Canadian Foreign Minister Mélanie Joly has threatened Indian diplomats, where she said that she has put the remaining Indian diplomats in Canada on notice. Joly also goes on to lecture India about the Vienna Convention, which states that a receiving nation must protect the missions of other nations, something clearly her own government has violated with the help of Khalistanis. So how does India respond to these threats is the big question. Joining us at this point is a special panel. We have KP Fabian, former diplomat, live with us. Major General Dhruv Katoch, Director, India Foundation, joins us live. Sumit Peer, political commentator, is also live with us. Professor Madhav Nalapat, Editorial Director of the Sunday Guardian, is also joining the broadcast live. Thank you all very much for being with us today. Let me begin with you first, Ambassador KPN. What do you make of these threats that are coming our way from Canada repeatedly?
Well, it seems Canada is determined to escalate the matter and has no intention of de-escalating it.
Yes. Clearly, of course, they have no intention of de-escalation. How then should these threats be responded to, and what do we make of these constant, very provocative statements being made, Major General Katoch, from very senior members of the Trudeau administration?
Thank you, Uday. Uday, there seems to be some very great deal of trouble as far as Mr. Trudeau is concerned with respect to his own politics and with respect to his survival in the next election, and that is about a year away. Now, there are two issues which have come up very prominently in the Canadian media. One of the issues is it is believed that the Chinese influenced the last two elections in which Trudeau got elected. Now, that is, of course, a very serious charge, and that is why the Foreign Interference Commission was held, in which certain statements were given by Mr. Trudeau. But still, he hasn't addressed the core issue of that interference by China. And as per the reports which are coming in, while there was interference, possibly didn't make an impact. Now, that, of course, is very difficult to judge whether it made an impact or not. But there was interference when the Chinese were trying to influence their elections, and it was with the knowledge and support of Mr. Trudeau. Now, to get away from that, because he's not in a position really to do anything to China, they've got huge dealings with them, economic and other dealings with the Chinese. So he's picked on India. I mean, that appears to be one of the issues. Now, but the surprising thing is when we are looking at the latest statement which they have said, that the other people are also of interest. In fact, the entire embassy now will be under watch. Well, we can do the same. The entire Canadian embassy can also be under watch here. They are no angels, but I don't think India wants to go that way yet. There is no reason for India to do tit for tat in every instance. I think India has been very restrained, because one thing has also come out clearly there. Every time it is the Australian Prime Minister who is speaking, or one of the very senior ministers. From the Indian side, basically it is left to the media, or perhaps to an officer of the Joint Secretary level in the MEA. That is the level in which we are taking it. There is a requirement to tone down rhetoric, especially by the Canadians. But if they don't do so, India is quite okay with it. We'll handle it. And I don't think there should be a major problem. We'll handle it. The loss is going to be Canada's. Obviously, we will also have problems, but Canada is going to suffer far more. So the only issue which I think is Justin Trudeau fighting this battle on his behalf himself, or is he doing it on behalf of the United States? That is something which will come out in the course of time. But for the moment, it doesn't matter what he does, we will handle it. There.
All right, let me take that across to Sumit Peer as well. Sumit Peer, what is Canada trying to achieve by making these continuous provocative statements?
Uday, thank you very much for having me on your show. Well, I'll begin with Hindi. In Hindi mein kahavat hai vinash kale viparit buddhi. And if a Mahagyani or a Brahman or a great warrior like Ravana could come to his end because of this, Justin is no exception to the law. Well, there are three important things what have happened. First of all, this mere statement that we have put all Indian diplomats on notice is mere escalation, is provocation. That's point number one. Point number two, and India has named this person called Sandeep, Sandeep Singh Sandhu. He's a part of the Canadian border police, and he has been named as the person who is helping and fermenting Khalistani activities and trouble in India. He's a Canadian citizen. So we have started calling them out. Third thing, there's a BRICS summit which is going to happen, and Prime Minister Modi will be going to Russia for that, which we came to know just around less than 24 hours back. So when Prime Minister Modi is going to be there, there's talk of a BRICS currency called unit. It might shape up, there might be some consensus on it and all. Now, with all those things happening up, the people in US are really rattled. If you see when the Americans have started raising similar questions, the Canada is trying to increase the ante, and in a way, they are trying to put pressure on India using these covert, measures, what we call as pinprick diplomacy, to put India into a path which is desirable to them. Fourth thing is, Uday, they never expected the kind of action what we did a couple of days back. In 2 hours, we could really have their house packing and going back. Now, what I find very oxymoronic is that we have expelled, that Canadian foreign minister says that they have expelled Indian diplomats and we could expel more. But the fact remains, we recalled our diplomats. You did not expel anybody. We gave, in fact, a demarching order to 6 of your diplomats. So for the sake of context, that has to be kept clear. When this person is losing ground nationally, internationally, when his Chinese angle has come out, and when on his parliament, there was a time when he said, yes, I have credible evidence that Indian intelligence agency is involved. Then in front of the commission, he says there's no evidence. It is just the intel which came from Five Eyes and my intelligence agencies picked it up and we thought we'll take it up with India. It's the onus of India to come and clear its house. It's like, Uday, if you have 5,000 rupees in your pocket, I say, let's negotiate how much is mine. Why the hell should you even negotiate? Bhai, mera paisa main tujse baat kyun karu? It is that logic, that absurd logic what is driving this man, because he is losing his traction everywhere. There's a budget which is coming up. He has to get that budget passed. To pass that budget, he needs Jagmeet Singh's support, and that is why now they're making it as an issue of naak. वो naak वाला विषय बना रहे हैं, a face issue. And now they did not expect this kind of a retaliation from India. They thought, because look, if I will be very candid with you, there are a lot of activities which CIA has done in the world, which Mossad has done in the world, and which even a lot of other intelligence agencies have done in the world. And there have been activities in Canada like the killing of Ripu Daman Singh. Nobody knows who killed Ripu Daman Singh. Baloch activist girl, nobody knows who killed him. All pro-India Sikh voices got assassinated in Canada. Nobody knows who killed them. Out of all the misery and the drug problem and the failing economy and the growth of 1.2%, what you're only left with is that to find our High Commissioner and our diplomats and question them for killing of a terrorist, which is a pure play case of gang war happening on your turf, because there are 29 terrorists and dangerous criminals which you refused to extradite in the last 10 years. Now, if these start killing each other, how does it become our problem? When these things have come up in the open, when this man has an egg on his face, is कहते हैं हिंदी में चांद पे थूकना, what happens next? Now he doesn't know what to do. So when he doesn't know what to do, he is trying to increase the ante and say, no, we are going to fight. This is the national issue of Canada. It is the national pride of Canada. When people, the dictators and foiled politicians, when they have nothing to do, they either hide behind their religion or they hide behind their national pride and try to make it an issue of the national pride and see if he can salvage his dwindling political career, which is not going to happen by any chance. That is what is happening in Canada. There are political reasons, there are geopolitical reasons, there is this BRICS summit, Prime Minister Modi going there, and eventually the Canadian people, the Canadian media, and everybody's having one question. Why did you lie, Mr. Prime Minister, 1.5 years on Canadian Parliament, on the floor of the Canadian Parliament, when you said, yes, we have credible evidence. Now today you are saying even we do not have credible intel. So how did things move from credible intelligence to no credible intel even? I mean, how can you act so immaturely, or is somebody pulling your ears? Are you the robot control of somebody? Well, a lot of people say that, Canada is the 52nd state of United States of America. If there are pressures coming from the southern border, I won't be surprised. This is quite a possibility. And with this BRICS summit coming up, unit as a currency shaping up, this dollar dominance kind of dwindling, kind of getting into a tough turf, and the US's debt increasing at an enormous rate. Uday, it is $100,000 per second today. More than that. $100,000, $200,000, $300,000, $400,000. That is the pace in which the US's, national and international debt, cumulative debt is increasing. With those things happening, Uday, there will be no surprises. We can have many more things happening. We can have many more people go bizarre. We can have many more people talking absurd things. You might think they are on opium or they are high on something, but it's not the case. It is really that pressure which is fermenting globally. But in the end, before concluding, I would again like to say, look, we have a great policy of strategic autonomy, but in my opinion, the way geopolitics is changing, I don't think it is sustainable for more than 4 quarters. we might even think on this and see which side of the divide we are on. Uday.
All right, let me quickly, in fact, now take that across to Professor Nalapat as well on how these threats, these statements should be responded to by India and what you make of the pattern.
Well, I agree with Major General Katoch that India has followed a restrained path, and frankly, it has been addressed at a much more junior level than the Foreign Minister or the Prime Minister, and that is as it should be. Now, we talked about cocaine and we talked about opium. Well, let me tell you that Prime Minister Trudeau legalized the free cocaine and free, and free, heroin in the province of British Columbia. He legalized free cocaine. Now, cocaine is a hard drug. It's not a soft drug. And more to the point, there are almost 6 to 7 deaths every day in just the single province of British Columbia as a result of cocaine overdose. So Mr. Trudeau is shedding, I don't know if tears are genuine or not, but he's shedding a lot of tears for this gentleman who is a facilitator of terror networks in India and who has, indirectly been and directly facilitated the killing of many Indians. While at the same time, what is happening to the 6 people who are dying every day? 6 to 7 Canadian people are dying every day in the single province of British Columbia because of cocaine overdose. And you'll be surprised, even more surprised to know that recently something, a particular chemical pharmaceutical laboratory in Canada was legalized to sell cocaine. And for some time there was a loophole that allowed them to sell to whomever they wanted. Now that loophole has been closed, but even the Prime Minister of British Columbia had to admit he was a bit shocked by that particular event. So I want to say that Trudeau is facing a very difficult situation because drug addiction is increased, violent crime has increased. We have talked about 6 to 7 people dying every day in a single province of British Columbia as a result of cocaine overdose. We can't even talk about the number of murders that are taking place in Canada. It was once a very safe country. It was once a country where this problem of widespread use of drugs was simply not there. And it's got transformed. And I think that is one of the reasons why Trudeau's popularity is going down. But I would fully agree with those who say that he's trying to take the attention off his own party's links with another country, China. And with the investigations, we don't seem to be going very fast at all into the party's linkages with China, and he's trying to create a diversion by heaping this kind of calumny on the Indian government and on India. So I think those who say that this is a diversionary move appear to be absolutely correct. And that's my view. I think the Prime Minister Trudeau needs to focus in his final year in office on cleaning up the mess that has been made regarding this cocaine use or addiction, and not give free cocaine and free heroin to anybody you ask. You'll be surprised. The budget of Canada, taxpayers are paying for free cocaine and free heroin for a fix. Now, this is a terrible situation, and I think Prime Minister Trudeau would be well advised to focus on such real situations rather than turn the spotlight on an imaginary enemy, which is the world's biggest democracy and a country essential for security in the Indo-Pacific, India. With that.
All right. Yes. Let me, in fact, quickly go back across to you at this point, Ambassador KP Fabian, on where you see this crisis between India and Canada headed in the near future.
Thank you. Before answering that precise question, let me make 1 or 2 points. One, it is the business of diplomacy to de-escalate. Point number 2, we have to get our facts right. It is not the case that at the big summit they are going to have a BRICS currency. President Putin, who is chairing it, has stated very clearly that they are not planning to have it. Secondly, again, getting the facts right. To say that Trudeau has done it because he is being attacked politically for reasons to do with China, yes, it's partly correct. But let's not forget the more important point that he has done it mainly, I repeat, for his political survival because he is dependent on support from the Sikhs in the Canadian Parliament, House of Commons, and more important point, while the Sikhs account for, well, one story is that it's about 36% of India's Indian community. It may be a little more, but what is important is that they are politically active. And among those who are politically active, the pro-Khalistanis take the leading role. So that is a fact of life which we have to recognize. Now, as regards what is going to happen, my personal view is that, and as I said earlier, Canada seems to be wanting to escalate it. Well, in that case, I do not see any de-escalation so long as Pierre Trudeau remains Prime Minister.
Yes, absolutely. And, quickly going back across to you as well, Major General Katoch, on, as far as, of course, now this crisis is concerned, do you see things headed to a point of no return? Could complete breakdown of relations be on the anvil? Is that a possibility?
No, I don't think the relations will break down completely. They've gone downhill, and perhaps they'll go downhill a bit further. But at some point, I think within Canada, their polity is very reasonable, and a lot of statements which I have read from very senior people within Canada, very senior people in their polity and in their administration, they are calling for things to go. In fact, very clearly they have mentioned that the major flaw lies within Canada itself. In this entire issue, it is the problem of Canada, and the problem they have very clearly stated is the support given by the government of Canada to terrorists from India. Now they have become Canadian terrorists who are propagating the Khalistani line. And they have made it very clear that Canada needs to get its act together. And this has not been said by some random people who are trying to propagate the Indian line or something. They have been said by politicians, very senior politicians, leaders of their party who have made these statements, and very senior people from the United States too has made that statement. So for Trudeau, he basically, because he cannot do anything as far as China is concerned, he wants to appear a strong man, to say, okay, with India, let us take some action. But it's not going to work. Indian diplomacy has changed dramatically over the last decade. And it is no longer the same India which these people can think about, which they are thinking about, that you can simply tell the Indian something and they will bow down and say, yes, sir, and we'll do your bidding. It's a different India. We're a very confident nation now, and I think the better, Mr. Trudeau realizes it, the quicker he realizes it, the better it is for both countries. But from the India side, I think we are going to play it cool. It is not something which is earth-shattering for India. We'll handle this chap. 25th October, I believe, is the elections that are going to be held next year. Do we have to wait that long? That is the only question we have to ask. Do we see strained relations for the whole year from now? Or can something be done to repair it? The ball is very firmly in Justin Trudeau's court. Let him take the appropriate action. If he wants to escalate, well, India will respond. The quid pro quo will be absolutely the same. We are not going to go ahead, but if he does something, well, we retaliate accordingly, and we are strong enough to do it now. Uday.
Absolutely. But do you see a possible tit-for-tat approach being taken further by India, Sumit, or are we going to continue to exercise restraint?
I think, Uday, India is not in a position to pull back. We have set our cards, we have set our path, and we don't take things lined up. I don't want to use the word starting with S. We don't take things lined up. So there is a message clear to Canada or any other European or Western countries which presume and believe that it is the India under Prime Minister Nehru. It's not India of Nehru, it's India of Modi, where things have drastically changed. What General Saab rightly said, last 10 years has been a great change in the Indian foreign policy, and India knows how to push to its size. Look, if I talk of Canada, There's around $15 billion which we give to their universities. There's a lot of diaspora which lives there, which contributes tax, which makes a good living there as is helping build Canada. There are 4.25 lakh students there. There's a $10 billion trade which is in favor of them by 6.5 to 6.5 billion and 3.5 billion respectively. So broadly talking about, there's around 25 to 30 billion dollars which is on the table. A country growing at 1.2% of the GDP, can they afford $30 billion? Can they afford to live without Indian students which are subsidizing 70% of their education? Can they afford to live without Indian diaspora? And let me tell you and warn them of one thing. Look, your real estate is today controlled by Chinese. And inside those Chinatowns, there's prostitution dens, there are gambling dens, there is drugs, and the most dangerous drug in the world, fentanyl, in which person dies within 18 months, whatever it may be, has entered Canada. You have a lot of things to worry than trying to bother about diplomats and trying to do this ghost hunting. The challenge here is, if Indian diaspora decides to liquidate their properties in Canada and cash them out, Canadian real estate will exactly go the way what the Chinese real estate has gone. So people in Canada and the government of Canada has to really think how much can push themselves, because honestly, we can survive without that $10 billion trade. Our students have the money. We can find some other countries who are willing to teach us, and Indian education system is going up. $10 billion dollar trade is not a big to us. So overall, if you look at the bigger scheme, Canada needs competent people to run their economy. If these people are not coming from India, where are you going to get the people from? And let me remind them, every fourth student today going to a school is an immigrant, and out of them 50% are from the Islamic world, or from the Islamic faith. And eventually this data is going to become 2 out of 4, then 4 out of 3 in next 15 to 20 years. And most of them will be Muslims, and all the Muslim immigrants which have reached China from Middle Eastern countries and all, Udayji, they are contributing nothing. They are siphoning their resources. They are eating on their social welfare. It is the Indian diaspora, like the American, like Indians in America or anywhere else, who are contributors, who are nation builders. It's not a call right now. It's also a call what will happen to Canada if Indians are out of the picture for next 30 years. And Prime Minister Modi is the tallest world leader with the highest ranking and recognition. And India is the largest democracy. You have to take a call. How much can you hit? If you are a super lightweight, don't come into heavyweights ring. It's not for you.
All right. Let me quickly go across to Professor Nalapat now for quick closing comments on where you see this now headed.
Look, I would think that we shouldn't bring religion into this at all in any way. But it is a fact that several extremist individuals are there in Canada, and that their radical ideas are very actively being propagated and to some extent being practiced in Canada. But the fact of the matter is, Uday, what is being affected is diplomatic relations. But if you look at trade, no problem. If you look at people to people, again, you have this visa difficulty. But again, there is really the people to people contact remains very friendly, because Canadians are overall very friendly people. So in my view, Uday, I think the Prime Minister Modi, who is a very, very firm on upholding the Indian interest, he is looking at the Indian interest. He is looking much beyond short-term, political and electoral calculations. And from the Indian interest point of view, Canada was and will remain a good friend. So far as Mr. Trudeau is concerned, I agree with Ambassador Fabian that it seems unlikely that things will improve. But may I point out one very important fact today, and that is that for some time, Trudeau was keeping quiet for some months on this India baiting tirade. And in fact, he even took the policy of cutting back on some of these visas to some of these ghost universities and ghost institutes to which individuals would come. And frankly, these individuals had they were not universities in any real sense of the term. And I don't know if they got degrees or not, probably not. But then they would then become immigrants to Canada. And guess what's happening? The Canadians trying to send many of them back, and they're refusing to go. And what is the argument? The argument that they're raising is, you chaps came in and, took over the land. So we are also coming in. If we are outsiders and we have to go, you go first. So I think the Canadians now realize they have a problem on their hands. And lastly, I want to add what I said all along. The Sikh community is not extremist. The Sikh community is a wonderful community, and these small, cohorts of people have no right to pose as representatives of this glorious Sikh community, which has done so much for India and so much for every country they have settled in. Uday.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.